Hi, this is Michael B from trackandsolo.com, and in this video we're going to go over a free VST called Analog Waveforms, and you'll need Decent Sampler for that. Let's get started. Originally I was just going to do this video on Decent Sampler, the platform itself. There's a bunch of other plugins that use the Decent Sampler as a platform for their different sounds, their different sampled sounds. But I ran into a problem. It wasn't so much with installing Decent Sampler itself, but Decent Sampler has a browser that's built into it, and for some reason I wasn't able to download the different free VSTs, and I tried a couple different ones and I kept running into the same error. I went on a deep dive to try to find a solution. I couldn't find a solution to that. However, you can go directly to their website and download the VSTs that work with Decent Sampler individually. That's what I did. I only had enough time to audition one VST, and that VST is called Analog Waveforms DS. It emulates vintage analog sounds. It comes with a variety of presets. There's not a lot of presets, but enough of the presets are good enough to get you going. And when I was playing around with it, I made quite a few adjustments to it, but to me that's a good thing. I don't like to use presets right out of the bag, and sometimes it's tempting if they're a really good sound and you don't want to change them too much, but I prefer to change them to something that not only suits the song and suits my style, but I like the idea of having more original stuff as opposed to just using presets right out of the box. Comes with a number of oscillators, which is actually sort of interesting because in a lot of VSTs you get a couple oscillators and then you basically choose what sort of waveform you want for that oscillator. Where I noticed that the oscillators that are in Analog Waveforms DS, they're preset. They have more than one oscillator, and each one of those oscillators are already preset to a specific waveform. And to turn each one of those oscillators on, you basically have a volume knob. So if you only want one type of waveform to play, then you would have all the knobs turned down on all the other oscillators, and you would have that playing by itself. If you want to mix and match the different waveforms a little bit, then you basically play around with the oscillator volume to mix and match the different waveforms, which I thought was kind of interesting. I haven't seen that before. It has the classic analog filters, the low pass, the high pass, the band pass. It has an effects section. From what I understand, the Decent Sampler pretty much always comes with these effects. I'm not sure if that's true of every single VST that uses that platform offers that, but most of the VSTs that I saw, on YouTube and stuff like that, they all had the MIDI delay and chorus already built into it. A big thing is low CPU usage. If you have an old computer, the computer that I had, I thought that it had enough power. For most things it did, but I did run into a VST or two that didn't work very well. It used a lot of system resources, and there's lots of pops and crackles while I was trying to use it. I found a workaround. Basically, after I picked the preset that I wanted and I had it sounded the best that I can with all the pops and the clicks, I basically rendered it down to an audio track. And once you do that, since it's not processing it in real time, the computer can take as long as it wants to render the audio back. So when you play the audio back, you have perfect audio. There's no pops, there's no clicks, you don't have any problems. So that was a workaround for that. And the other thing with Decent Sampler is it's cross-platform available on Windows and also on Mac OS. So let's take a look at it a little bit more, play around with it. Let's come up with some decent sounds. And I threw together a quick arrangement with a bunch of MIDI files and my drum template, and we'll see what we can come up with today. Okay, and then basically after it's downloaded, this is basically what it looks like. This was the problem that I was running into when I went into browse, and this is the browser with a bunch of different VSTs that you can download. This is what I was having a problem using, but eventually what I did is I just went to the Decent Sample website and I was able to download any one of these that I wanted to. And as you can see, some of them are free, some of them cost some money. Free. There's a lot of free ones out there, so I wouldn't be too worried about the paid ones. But as you can see, free. And what's interesting about this is these are all very sort of interesting, unique sounds. It's just not just another analog VST to create sounds, but these are actually, a lot of them are pretty simple and pretty interesting. I haven't listened to the sounds themselves, but I had watched a bunch of YouTube videos where people used various ones, and it is pretty interesting. Particularly, if you're putting a song together, I always sort of like the idea of having like at least the lead instrument be like very unique, very different, and then maybe your pad and maybe your bass didn't need to be as unique. It just needed to sound good, and it just the pad and, like, let's say the bass lines and stuff would support the melody, in other words. But to have like a unique melody, number one, and also have a unique sound that is very uncommon. I always like the idea of that, so that's why I kind of thought what I'd like to start doing is try out a lot of these free samples and use that as my lead instrument to be unique, and then stick with the old analog synth for like the bass and maybe the pad, and maybe something else. If I found something interesting that is super short in duration, like a pluck, then I would consider using like a pluck as either part of the melody or throw a arpeggiator on it. But getting back to this, let's go ahead and go back to analog waveforms itself. There's not a ton of let's see, how many of these were there? I don't remember. There wasn't a lot of them. I think there's only, okay. So there's 20 different presets. I ran through all of them, and let's go ahead and see first if we can. I'm gonna just start back here at number 1. Okay, with the good old analog pad. So since this is telling me that this isn't number 1. What's number 1? Okay, stereo pad. Since I know that this is a pad, I'm going to jump over to my chords, and then let's run through these pads. I have a bunch of different sessions open, analog waveform sessions open. So since we know that it's a pad, I'm not going to use it for the main melody. I'm going to use it for the chords. Here's what I was talking about before. Here are your oscillators, and you're not really choosing the oscillator necessarily by throwing a switch, or I should say choosing a waveform by hitting the switch or anything. You're basically adjusting the volume of the waveform, and then you can also adjust the attack, decay, sustain, and release, the panning, and the tuning of each one of these oscillators. You have a delay down here, as you can see, along with reverb. So you have like your ambient section right here. I guess maybe you might want to call it. Here's your filter, the cutoff, filter, resonance. You have a chorus mix and a phase mix and a center frequency, which I think is sort of like kind of a cutoff, and your glide. So if you want to glide from one note to another as opposed to going directly from one note to another, you have a glide feature, and you can adjust the amount of glide, which is pretty interesting. But let's see if we can find a pad that we're going to use for our chords for this little arrangement that I put together. And let me first just loop it, and I have it soloed, and let's go back to our chords. And let's just run through some of these pads to see if we can find something we like. We have a volume control down here. I notice that this is very loud. You have some levels up here, and I've had this buried like more than once when using this. I'm not sure why this is so loud, but you do have a level down here that you can adjust it. I'm going to hit play here, and then we'll play around with some of these settings to see what sort of variations we can come up with and sort of pick out the best pad that we're going to use for our little arrangement. Let me give it a little more volume. See, even at 50% volume right here, if you look up at the meters here, see, did you see how it went into the red there? I'm not sure why this thing is so loud, but at least you can turn it down. And here's your pulse. So you could really hear that pulse in there. Now let's just try the saw. You can still sort of hear that pulse in there, but you see up here already? It's really distorting. As I said before, you have all these adjustments through here. Now this one has a lot of delay on it. Let's see if I can turn this delay down. I think I'd like reverb more so than the delay. But as I said before, you got to watch the meters up here. And if you're listening, you can hear a little bit of distortion at times. This is, let's see, there's your glide right there. Okay, let's check out some of these different pad sounds. So we already heard the stereo pad. This one already has a glide set to it, which this is kind of interesting. It's bass. Yeah, I think that this is interesting. See again, starting to distort, so you gotta bring that level down. See, you can hear a lot of and you also have pan, which is interesting too, so you can pan the different oscillators in the stereo field. Soft pad sounds interesting. This one's obviously detuned a little bit, a little too much. that sounds pretty good. I think I like this one the best, and I think it's mainly because there's a ton of reverb on this. Turn the volume up a little bit on this. I think I might use that for the chords. That was Retro Pad 2. Yeah, I like 2 better. So again, distorting up there again. I think that was it, and that's the initialize. So I think for the pads, or for the chords, let's go to... it was this one right here. Now that is pretty lush sounding. I'll just give it a little more volume. This is part of it. I don't have it up very loud here. It does sound a little choppy now. Or if it's this pulse part. You can open it up or close the filter. I think the other reason why I like this is there's a chorus effect on it. The chorus adds a lot, doesn't it? Okay, now that we have our chords, let's see if we can find a lead next. And we got this started here. Okay, let's pick out our lead here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and hit play, and let's see if we can find something. I know we don't want the pads, so we can just skip through this. We don't want bass. Fantasy piano. Let's see how that sounds. It certainly helped it, I think. It's also playing in a higher register, the MIDI notes, so you have to kind of keep that in mind too. But this is the lead or the melody part, anyways. So let's see what the next one has. Yeah, not only is this good for the lead, but you could probably, if you're doing trance, you could use chords with this as well. I like it. I'll definitely probably be using it. Super simple. Yeah, this is another one of those sounds, in my opinion, that's not, unless you're gonna use it as like an effect someplace. It's not very musical. It's not too bad. Check out the next one. It's not too bad. Yeah, this is another one. This one I'd have to do a lot of tweaking to make it usable. This wouldn't be bad for like a pluck, maybe. There you go. A lot of... See, if you have too much resonance, sometimes it sounds like it's distorted. So that's why if I start to hear something that sounds like it's distorted, I immediately bring that back down. Yeah, this is another one I would probably have to do a lot of tweaking to get it usable. And then a soft pad, we already went through the pads. This is sort of interesting. Lots of echo. Pads, we already went through pads. We're not looking. I think the piano was close enough, and when I played around with it a little bit, I think the fantasy piano sounded pretty good. So let's tweak that a little bit so it goes well. Sounds good. Had a little too much reverb on it before. Okay, so we have that and we have that. Let's check out some bass sounds. The stereo pad, I guess we can start out with that. There's really only a couple bass patches in here, but some of these other synth parts you could use as a bass sound, as long as you're using a lower register. But let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, that's obviously unusable. That wouldn't work. You could do a bunch of tweaking, but that wouldn't work, I don't think. Again, you'd have to do a bunch of tweaking to make that work. This one is actually, I think, I like the best. Has a little bit of a chorus on here to fatten it up. I would probably layer it. I'd probably open up 2 channels, each with this patch, and I would probably use, for the sub bass, I would probably remove all the chorus off of it, any sort of delay, and use a low pass filter above 100 Hertz to use for my sub bass, because this does even taking all this ambience out of it. It sounds really good and thick. And then I would layer over it the same sound with a high pass filter cut off at 100 hertz and mix both of them together. And with the chorus sound, it'll give the illusion that it's fatter. So I like this one so far the best, I think, even though we've only heard a couple. Here's just a piano. So that's, couldn't use that really. This you could use, I think. A little bit of tweaking. I do like it though. I think I'd probably have to cut just a little bit of the filter down. That's not too bad. This is, again, another one of those unusable sounds that you'd really have to do a lot of tweaking to make it usable. Echo keys. This is not for the bass at all. This one's just like the trance lead. You have to do some tweaking, and I noticed that part you can get rid of that with this by getting rid of the phaser. If you'll notice, you won't hear it now. So it's an interesting effect if you didn't want to use it too much, to have that noise really subtle in the background, maybe, to add a little bit of interest, I guess. This, again, is, I don't think you could use this at all. This would take a lot of tweaking as well. I don't think any of these we'd be able. Let's listen to this maybe. Maybe, again, I think because it's in such a low register, you'd be able to maybe use that. This. Again, maybe a little bit of tweaking. The pads, I don't think I would even bother. If you did, you'd have to reduce the attack down so you don't have that delayed reaction so much, but you'd still have to do a lot of tweaking to this, so that I wouldn't bother with that. This is basically unusable. Key repeater, yeah, that's not great. This is an interesting sound, but not for the bass. I don't think any of these pads are gonna work. The pulse, just like the trance lead, you might back the filter up, cut the cutoff filter back. You might be able to use it. And last but not least, Echo Synth. Again, that would definitely need some tweaking. So I think the sound that I'm going to stick with is, if it lets me, and that is the stereo bass, which is specifically designed to be the bass. Okay, so I'm gonna mix this up a little bit, and then I'll pause the camera, and then we can listen to what we have. Okay, I did a little bit of mixing here. While I was doing some mixing and changing some levels around so it would sound halfway decent, I did notice that there's just too much clashing going on between the lead, the chord, and the bass. It just it just didn't sound right. So what I did instead was I'm going to skip with the melody, but I did set up another track with chords, and I threw an arpeggiator on there. The arpeggiator, the sound that I'm using is called Echo Keys. I really didn't make any changes to this per se, but I did add EQ and I did add a binaural pan. And the reason why I did that is for some reason, some of these sounds in here, it's heavier on one channel than it is on the other. And in Studio One, if you try to use the panning, you're basically panning stereo. It's actually kind of complicated to try to explain, but the easy thing to do is if you want something mono and you want to be able to pan it properly, you throw this in here, you set it for mono, and then instead of it being a stereo channel coming in, now it's a mono channel here, and then you can pan that mono signal anywhere in between the left and the right channel. And I just change it to the right. I'm going to just play it for you a little bit here. Let me take the automation off. I'm going to play it for you a little bit here so you have an idea of the sound. I did do some drastic EQing because not that it really needed it. I felt that it sounded interesting, so I put a huge peak here at 2K. And this is what it sounds. Yeah, let me solo it out, and this is what it sounds like. I just thought that it sounded super interesting, so I decided to roll with it. So basically I'm using the bass, the lead, and this sound right here for arpeggiator, the echo keys. And again, I really didn't make too many changes in here. I did a little bit of tweaking with the bass. It had just a little too much resonance. I did do a little bit more of a cutoff. Everything else I pretty much left the same. And for the chords, again, we used the retro pad 2, which was the same sound that we went through. I did make some slight adjustments just to kind of sort of smooth it out a little bit. It is an interesting sound. You'll hear it. There's a little bit of a drop right here, and you'll be able to hear how interesting it sounds. But let's take it from the top and listen to this thing. Here we go. The ending would have been a little more smoother. I added some automation, but I had the automation turned off. But anyways, if you liked the video, please like. If you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe, and we'll see you later.